Hello. I think that, can you all hear me? Can all our speakers hear me? Yes, good. Okay, great. Amazing. So welcome everybody. This is our first official talk for our event after our welcome chat. Didn't really count, did it, Margot? So welcome and thanks so much for joining us. So we are going to be discussing the perfect retail and beauty match. And I think that being one of the founders at Curate and speaking to so many brands and retailers, I think this is such a key point, because really having two of you kind of partner together, retailers and brands, to find one another is so key. And I think it is brilliant to have our incredible speakers here today, who are going to help unveil the incredible what kind of buyers are looking for, and how brands you can stand out and really make yourself known. And I think that right now, direct-to-consumer brands like Glossier have been so appealing, but retail still has its place and is extremely significant. And it's not just great for brands to grow and expand, but it's also broadens brand awareness, gets them into different regions that they perhaps wouldn't necessarily be able to target. And it's also about growing as a business, so experiencing how to work on fulfilling larger orders and really scaling your business. Competition, of course, is tough, and there's so many brands out there, and it's hard to stand out. But hopefully, these guys that we have here today will be unveiling their truths and what really brands and retailers can do to kind of work better together. So I won't go on too much with an intro. I want to hand over to you guys to really introduce yourself and for the audience to get to know you. So we'll start with you, Wiz, if that's okay. Can you give us a little bit of a short intro about yourself, your background, and up to at the moment?
Yeah, of course. I'm Wiz, founder of WIZZ&CO, a brand and retail strategy agency. We work with a cross-section of brands, from brand founders, helping them to scale, to pitch to retailers, but also increase the value of their business so they are attractive to buyers and ultimately more customers. But we also work with large retailers. Just finished a project working with Fenwick. Also worked with Ocado and Next and helped launch Beauty onto the Next website. My background was spending 12 years working at Selfridges, which was amazing. I worked across fashion, accessories, buying handbags and jewelry, which was amazing. And then I was head of beauty buying. After that, I went to work and was sales director for Cowshed and Soho Home as part of the Soho house retail part of the business. So I sat on the other side of the table to buyers, which, believe me, was so it wasn't an eye-opener because I knew what they were like, but I had a different dynamic, let's put it that way. So yeah, I've sat on both sides of the table, and I understand that working with retailers can be challenging. So I work with a number of different brands, from helping them pitch kind of behind the scenes, if you don't want to use an agent or a distributor, or actually with those that are already trading with retailers, how can they maximize the opportunity? So I work in small groups and masterminds in that way.
Amazing, thanks, Liz. Simi, should we head to you?
Perfect. Thank you. So my name's Simi Lindgren. I'm the founder and CEO of YUTY, formerly YUTY Bazaar, the AI-driven conscious beauty destination. And we're a beauty marketplace. We list conscious beauty brands, and we leverage artificial intelligence to match people to the right beauty products. My background today has been pretty untraditional. I think it's always had this overarching ethos of kind of consciousness and personalization. I attended medical school, and I guess the hopes were to match people and patients with the right treatment. Then I dropped out and I ended up in publishing, where you're matching advertisers to audiences, and then Marcom's tech, so working with beauty brands and luxury brands and PRs, and helping match brands and PRs with media and celebrity and influencers. But right now, in this kind of key stage of my career, it's really helping kind of match customers with the right beauty products to feel empowered, and that's matching them to the right brands that will allow them to feel empowered.
Incredible, thanks, Simi. And over to you, Rebecca, just a short intro, please.
Great, thanks. Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca and I'm the founder and CEO of Loan Design Club. Loan Design Club is an omni-channel retail platform, so we really focus on helping grow brands across physical and digital. And the way we do that is through our curated e-commerce marketplace, and we focus on pop-up stores, which we believe is the future of retail. So really focusing on short-term, maximum impact, experiential retail. My background is across luxury fashion, actually in the design sector, which is where I kind of got started. I went through a lot of the challenges that small brands face in getting their brands to market, and realized just how many incredible brands focusing on sustainability that there were out there that just didn't have a route to market. And it was back in 2018 that I decided to and move from the design side into actually being, you know, one of the people to push and to promote brands that are trying to make a difference. Basically seen it from both sides of the fence, and really kind of on a mission to help change what we shop, the way we shop, you know, and why people shop. So looking at new ways to connect brands with conscious consumers.
Amazing. Thanks, guys. And what's so lovely about this is we've worked with all three of you in different ways throughout Curate Beauty. And so it is, yeah, it's amazing to have you here. Amazing wealth of knowledge. So if anyone does have any questions for these guys throughout, please put it in the chat. Margot will be on standby to ask as we go along, but otherwise I'm going to get cracking. So guys, what is the most interesting areas in beauty retail right now? It doesn't just have to be product or a category, but could be services as well. Wiz, do you want to kick things off? What is standing out for you at the moment?
Yeah, it's definitely, I suppose it's the retail shake-up, and there's been a huge amount of change just in, I suppose, the last 6 months, which has been super exciting. And not surprising, really. I think I've heard a lot of people saying, well, what about retail? Is it dead? And it's like, absolutely, it's not. It's just the reinvention. It's just happening faster than ever. I mean, we've seen the consolidation already of online retailers. There's a lot of online retailers out there, but kind of with the Curate Beauty and Sephora acquisitions, obviously was huge news in the UK. I think over in America, it's interesting. You've kind of got the Ultas and Sephoras partnering and collaborating and popping up in different formats. Again, they announced that a year and a half ago. So they were really forecasting that people were going to be shopping in different ways. Actually, things have become less London-centric, which is what I absolutely love. Having worked at Selfridges and having 4 stores, I was just very used to brands always focusing on London. But there is so much more opportunity outside London. It doesn't mean that the customer isn't as engaged. Yes, there might be less people, but then it's a domestic customer as well. And people are now going more to destination shopping centres or their kind of high street towns. So where kind of the high street may have been kind of a bit dead in kind of regional locations, we're now seeing this revival and people are shopping in different places. I think there's also an understanding of where people are spending their money. And actually, if you are spending it in your kind of local area, that's kind of going back into your local council in a way as well. Not as many people are coming into London. So I think it's super exciting. And we're just seeing a lot of shops close, but we're seeing a huge amount of them open as well, and a huge amount of them popping up as well. So I think it's a great opportunity for brands and for retailers to be able to, just think differently and make sure they're aligning with the retailers that are set up for success in the future.
Amazing. Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that has been something that I think has been really amazing coming out of the pandemic, is that all these little pockets of across the UK are now finally seeing some attention. Rebecca, you guys are launching incredible stores in brilliant places across London and the UK. What about you? What for you is the most interesting areas in beauty retail right now?
Yeah. I think just quickly kind of following on from what Wiz was saying, I think it's so fascinating how there is so much talk about, oh, the high street's dead, and it's the data and what we're seeing is the opposite. It's just totally being reinvented. And, you know, there are a lot of brands leaving, but there's a lot coming through. And a lot of them actually, you know, Glossier is one that's actually rolling back into physical. A lot of bigger companies now are looking at actually the future is purely about this wonderful mix of physical and digital, this omni-channel offering about customers across all different levels. And just understanding what customers want from the physical experience doesn't mean it's dead. It's just a different way of communicating, building that relationship, which obviously we love at LDC and I think is super interesting. I think a lot of a lot of areas right now, and it's definitely beauty, but also across the kind of fashion sectors, are what's happening with, you know, digitization as we go deeper into understanding what people want. The fact that we're all on our computers, we're all digitally so much more than we ever were. And it's really about quality and about personalized communication lines with our customers, as opposed to just a quantity of, you know, bombarding content. I think there's a lot of things fascinating going on kind of in that space. You know, looking at virtual try-ons, you know, what, you know, YUTY, Simi, what you're doing, there's some fascinating things coming out. And I think we're at the beginning of a really exciting, you know, authenticity, you know, and sustainability is a thing, all really come to the surface, which is why we're seeing this really rapid transformation in the high street. And it's, I think we're at the beginning of a really exciting period, new age of retail. And the most fascinating part, I guess, from our perspective, what we're seeing is we're in a period where the customer doesn't know what they want yet. Their patterns are, everything's kind of up in the air and a bit all over the show. And I think it's a really interesting opportunity time to evaluate what this new wave, or the new kind of plans, this new journey is going to look like. Obviously, it's going to be challenging and chaotic for a while, but a really interesting period that we're entering.
Simi, I can see you nodding there. Do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Wiz and Rebecca have said. You know, there are so many interesting things that have cropped up in beauty retail that have been driven by this kind of, driven by consumers and this fragmented journey that they've been having when it comes to discovery, evaluation, validation, and purchase. You know, when you're thinking about brands embracing diversity and inclusivity in a real way, going beyond shade ranges and focusing on products that are accessible. And then, you know, the acquisitions of Feel Unique by Sephora and Cole Beauty by THD, all of these things that are happening to really drive what consumers are really asking for, which is kind of a real connection. And then, as you know, we touched on, as Rebecca touched on, you know, what we're doing at YUTY, which is kind of the personalization thing. And of course, you know, technology really comes in to really heighten that experience that consumers have with brands when we're leveraging technology like AI, AR, VR, and being able to provide this kind of hyper-personalized way of communicating with customers. Even last week, there was an announcement of Barry M and Perfect Core, you know, that virtual try on with Barry M makeup. And you would think of these things that are happening, it's really what the consumer's been asking for so long, because they've wanted that connection. And the other thing that I found really interesting, and again, a recent announcement, is kind of beauty subscription services. You know, Beauty Pie, I think they raised, 100 million Series B last week. And that's also something that consumers have been screaming for. So this whole kind of retail shakeup has really been driven by consumers and what they're asking for, which is personalization, kind of that improved experience, you know, marrying the in real life with URL and just convenience and being recognized.
Totally. And I guess like this impacts obviously the end customers is who we're doing this all for. But how's the pandemic itself affected your guys' buying strategies? And when you're working with, for example, for you, when you're working as a consultant for retailers, how are they looking at their buying strategies in a different way now, post-pandemic, to how they were previously?
I think buyers are kind of across the mix, and I kind of know a lot of people. Industry is everyone's having to work harder than ever, and different retailers were in different camps, and some of them furloughed teams, which was or part teams, which is hugely hard, so they were massively stretched. But they did know that actually once people started coming back to store, they had to adjust quicker than ever, and then obviously when everything moved to digital only, again they had to move quicker than ever. So actually these buying teams are moving faster than ever. And again, I've heard a lot of people say, oh well, maybe I don't think they're doing much at the moment. I'm like, if they don't do anything, they're in the shit. They really need to be moving really, really quickly. So it's constantly about innovation. And that's not just about product, but it's about experience, it's about point of difference, and it's about kind of curating an edit, and no longer can they be so reliant on, I suppose, all the big corporate brands, particularly in beauty, where you have all of these big shop fits? That's starting to become hugely problematic for a lot of different retailers. And as we're seeing kind of new retailers launch, we're seeing different size footprints. I mean, I don't know if anyone's been to the flannel store yet, but there's a lot of the, I suppose, larger established brands that have these huge counters in traditional department stores. Actually, they're on a much smaller footprint, almost a kind of more Sephora style. And although Flanders haven't got a huge edit of indie brands, I think there's still a lot more that they could be doing, and maybe they will be in the future. I think that is how you can start to make a point of difference and a tone of voice as well. But then it's about how you're activating that, how you're creating that customer experience, how you're engaging with them as well. And certainly what buyers want to be seeing from a brand, they want to see that there's kind of a hype and a buzz around a brand as well, that there's lots of activity happening in the market. So that's making sure you're focusing on multiple different marketing channels, making sure you're being seen and heard in the right places, because that's when you start to get attractive to a buyer.
And that kind of leads me on quite nicely onto what I wanted to ask you guys next is, now with there being so many more brands, I feel like that have even come out of the pandemic, independent brands especially have had kind of a lot of the spotlight on them, and retailers are now starting to take notice of them. What's important to you guys, and what do you look for in a brand before you either take it into a store or pop it on your website? Simi, I was going to call you YUTY there. Simi? Simi,
I mean, we're different because obviously, you know, being a marketplace, we're asset light, we don't hold stock or inventory, but we list and we curate conscious beauty brands. And they're aligned with kind of our values, and our muster are a little bit different. We care about the brand and the founder philosophy and their sustainability mission, as well as all the other things that stockists usually care about, you know, because we have to avoid, you know, disintermediation, which SKUs are performing, which, you know, what the customer rate of return is, whether there's traction and brand loyalty. But really for us, the must is kind of their philosophy, what's going on behind the brand, and whether they mean what they say, because we know that consumers are really kind of voting with their wallets, and, you know, their purchase power is even more stronger today than it's ever been before. So it's ensuring that we curate brands that really mean what they say and they back up what they say, because they'll resonate with our customers.
And Rebecca, for you at LDC, what do you guys look for, and how can you, I mean, I know you're also looking at the conscious brands, but how do you really get that transparency from them? What are the sort of key points, and how can brands make that so much clearer for you to understand, so that you know exactly who's who from who, basically?
I mean, I think, you know, I guess kind of building on what Simi said, it's a similar process. Sustainability is obviously super key, and it is one of the toughest things to vet, to be totally honest. It is still such a gray area. What brands say to what they do is one thing, what is deemed acceptable to one. And I think the most important part here is, as a business, defining what sustainability means to you and using that as a springboard. With a business, you know, essentially using that, I guess, then brands will approach us, and it's ensuring that we're on the same page about that definition and how we define sustainability. It is really difficult. It is a mixture of quantitative to qualitative research. It is very hard to vet, as you will also agree. It is a challenge. Documentation is great. Certifications are great, but they're expensive. They mean different things. Different accreditations are important to different people, different parts of the world. So it is a bit of a minefield, and it involves a lot of, you know, I guess evidence kind of backed research, but then also a lot of conversations. And at the end of the day, it's important that our team reserves the right to make that informed decision. So that vetting process is challenging. The most important thing for us is that the brand is an approach towards building a brand that's better for people and planet. I think a couple of other things to kind of build on that we think are really important when brands are coming forward. As you said, Sam, you know, this is a really saturated market. There has never been more brands, you know, often in times like this, if we look at 2008 recession or in other periods, this is the boom when it comes to entrepreneurship. A lot of coming out, a lot of side hustles. The competition is fierce. And the most important thing for us, especially with a new brand, is that USP is completely tried, tested, and foolproof. You have to know your message. You have to be doing something different. You have to have a really strong take. And all of that means just do one thing. Do one product. Do it so well, everyone gets it from just one image. Don't do everything. Don't do a whole collection. Don't do too much. Keep it so simple that anybody can get it and everyone is wowed by that one image or that one sentence. For us, brands that do that, the evidence is there that they can blow up because it's communicate digitally, physically, however it becomes. Already a kind of, I guess, evidence need for that.
Love that. That's some really good advice. And Wiz, what for you? Do you think, how impactful is say social media for a brand? And when you're looking at brands, are you going straight to their website or are you going straight to their Instagram? What is the kind of first port of call, and how important are social followings to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's one element of it. And this is where I see a lot of brands get really stuck because they're focusing on social media, they're focusing on followers, they're focusing on likes. That doesn't always translate into sales. And then people get really, really frustrated and they don't understand kind of why they're putting, and content takes so long to create. And they're spending all this time and energy putting this content out there. They've got a website and then they're trying to grow followers, and then it kind of things can come a bit stagnant. But it's really about having a strategy in place. It's really thinking about the bigger picture. And this is what I teach brands a lot. It's like, how do you zoom out? And ultimately that USP is absolutely crucial. If a customer doesn't understand what you're doing in one sentence, or you can't describe that in one sentence, and I can guarantee you 80% of brands can't. I've done this at kind of at shows before when I've been talking on stage and said, talk to your neighbour and do it in one sentence. And I actually have never done that again because I couldn't quiet the room. So nobody could do it in 30 seconds. So if you are in that boat, it isn't you. And I work a lot with brands one-to-one to be able to kind of refine that. So the customers really understand, and then the buyers do as well. But then it's also what your validation is in the market. So you've got to create this hype. People have to see you in multiple different places. And I think if we all think about our own purchase, what did we last purchase ourselves? How many times have we seen or heard that? Have we read about it? Had a friend told us? Have we seen it in a magazine and then we saw it in a blog and then we probably Googled it? Do you rank in Google? Does it show up? So again, this can suddenly start to feel overwhelming. But again, it's being strategic. It's focusing on what the right things are at the right time. And it's about so much more than posting on social media and getting followers. Because actually, once you start to create, that's when a brand suddenly goes boom and it explodes. And people think, oh my God, I've never heard about this. It's an overnight success. Nothing is an overnight success. It's always been that kind of gradual, that build, and then all that hard work suddenly just kind of comes together and you've heard about it. So yeah, it's always good to kind of think about your own purchase history. And I think always looking at other categories as well can be helpful, because it kind of helps you zone out a bit, which can be really hard when you're working in your own business, which is why I advise to kind of work with somebody or kind of get a community, get some, kind of cross mentor, or kind of find a group of people that you can kind of share your challenges and work through together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, having a sounding board or just one person to tell something for them to understand what you're going through or to get the point across is key. And for you guys, how important is it that the founders are present, that they are, I mean, Wiz, we've spoken about this before many times, but I mean, how important should the founder be across social media? Should they be the forefront of the company? What do you guys think? Simi, shall I go to you?
Oh, goodness. It's so funny because I've been talking about this a lot over the past, I think, 4 weeks, about how present I should be, being an introvert and the way I am, and all my public profiles are basically like LinkedIn and Twitter, and everything else is private because no one wants to see me and my children in various different weird positions. But it's just, I feel like so much of building that engaged and interested community is people understanding who's behind the brand. And I hope that we do it for YUTY brand partners. We kind of have a Meet the Founder series, and every brand has a page and who's behind the brand. I'm kind of struggling with doing it with YUTY because we are an AI-driven marketplace. So I feel like we've gone on this journey of anthropomorphizing YUTY, this AI, with my voice, which means that I can still be in the background. But I feel like it is I think so much of what the consumer wants these days is kind of relating or having some sort of connection, that kind of personal feeling, which is why indie brands do so well and have such high retention rates and have that customer loyalty more so than big beauty used to have. People would say, oh, I use my Elizabeth Arden 8-hour cream like religiously, and now people are talking about that, about indie brands as if they were big beauty. So yeah, it's something that I'm battling with, but I know it's of huge importance. And I don't know about you, Rebecca and Wiz, whether that's how that works for you.
Where's your nodding? Do you want to come in?
Yeah, you have to, yeah, it's hard, and I've been there, and I suppose the last 18 months I've really focused on my personal profile and also the branding of my own business, because I was like, I had to treat myself like a brand. I had to practice what I preach. I had to put a lot of content and videos out there, and it's hard, and I've done it on the business side, and I talk a lot of events now, and I do a lot of videos on kind of whether it's YouTube and webinars. The personal bit, it's still challenging, and that's my next step, but I think you have to, and that's how people buy. And look at Bobbi Brown, it's absolutely tanking in the market. She left. Look at Laura Mercier, a founder, but is not visible. It's just not working anymore. There is no connection. Look at Charlotte Tilbury, absolutely flying. She's the ultimate face of that brand, probably more than anybody has ever been a face, I suppose, in makeup. So yeah, it gives you a point of difference, and where you're struggling with that USP, where there are literally tens of thousands of skincare brands out there, your story and why you created that, and you probably had a problem yourself, which is why you identified to create that, which is kind of everyone's story. That's how you create that emotional connection, and you get that cut through, and it is more and more important than ever. And the whole psychology of sales has always been about emotional connection. You think about the big brands, they pay influencers. This is how the influencer movement started, because it was about trust. It was about a person. We're now seeing that nosedive. So these big brands are having to pay people. They have to pay huge ambassadors, whether it's kind of Julia Roberts or Jennifer Aniston. They're paying millions from this, and brands have this in their back pocket, front pocket. It's just there. It's you. So it's criminal not to do it, but it's the hardest thing to do, because you've got to do a lot of work on yourself and your own. Get over a lot of inner stuff first. But again, that's part of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely. Rebecca, do you want to add anything to kind of echo what everyone has said?
Yeah, I think everyone's kind of covered it. I think the only thing I'd say is, because I agree, I'm in the same boat. I find it tough. I don't like doing it. If I had a choice, I wouldn't. I prefer being in the business, hands-on, growing it behind the scenes. But you're right, you can't not. We unfortunately or fortunately, whatever way you want to look at it, that authenticity, that human connection, it is so key. And people need that. I think the only thing that I've learned, or what I would say, is don't like stuff when to it. It can get really easy to be in your head and to be worried about a post, or worried, and then you end up spending so long. The anxiety, it can really mess with you, right? And I think the big thing is just put stuff out there that you feel comfortable with. It's about being yourself, but also just choosing a part of yourself that you want to put out there. You don't have to put all the personal stuff. I prefer to just use it more for kind of a bit of personality coming through, but I think you need to almost write the rules of who you want to put out there, how much and to what extent. And I think the big thing is ask yourself, or it's what I tend to do, is what am I trying to communicate? What do I want to change? Why am I doing this? What is the purpose of me posting? And a lot for us is, being able to put, for me, is putting out amazing that are coming, that we think want to be amplified, that voice, or what are we doing that's interesting that we want people to get on board with, and just choosing that focus and choosing the channel that resonates best, without again trying to spread too thin, do too much, feel like you have to do everything, which I don't think you do.
Absolutely, no, 100%. And this is, Margot and I talk about this all the time, because we're like, how do you put yourself out there but also do the business at the same time? And it's hard to find a good balance. It really is.
It's hard, especially and you're just I don't want to look at my camera. I need to get to it. Exactly. But you've got to put a smile on, throw a bit of makeup on or whatever. And, and you've got to just, but it's like you said, we're in this business. It's what we do. It's a tough one, but yeah, I think writing your own rules of what you do, what you want to do, is really important.
Absolutely. And now kind of going back to the brands and how they normally approach you guys, what are kind of the common mistakes that you see when brands are pitching to you? And do you guys ever share any kind of positive criticism that can help them shape their brands? It would be good to know just some kind of key pointers of things that you think have worked either really well or either not well at all, and to kind of say, no, do not do this when you're approaching a buyer. Wes, shall we start with you? What do you?
God, I could have hours for this, and I do have a training program actually, which I think you're going to follow up on afterwards, which is a kind of 2 hours of me rambling about this one because there's so much to share. But I suppose I'll do it from the position of having been at Selfridges, is make sure you do your research. Honestly, the amount of people that hadn't done their research, people that hadn't been into the store and come for a meeting. I remember someone came for a meeting once, and the office was above the store and they hadn't been in the store. Do your research, be succinct, be really clear about what you're going to be communicating, because they will be skim reading that email, they will be skim reading that document. A buyer at a big department store will be managing between kind of 30 to 200 brands. Certainly the indie beauty buyer at Selfridges is managing about 200 brands. Like, it's crazy. They have at least 200 emails a day. I used to have between 8 and 10 meetings a day. You'd get back to your desk and you'd have piles of products on your desk. You really don't have time to be able to look at things in detail. So first impressions really, really count. And with those big retailers, you may not hear back. So be prepared for that. And then get ready to approach again in 6 months when you've got something new to say, when you've built up your business further, when you can prove your value more. So as much as buyers want to be able to give feedback to brands when they're getting 10 pictures a day, their KPIs are to make more money for that business. Their KPI is not to feed back to brands, which is heartbreaking, which is why I'm quite passionate about working with independent brands now, because I want to help people navigate that more, because it's a really challenging time, and it's a point where I see a lot of people wobble about their business. Either they don't take that first step to approach those big retailers because they're scared, understandably. They've heard some horror stories, a bit like the ones I'm sharing now, or they have approached and they haven't heard back and they think it's them. But actually, it's just not the right time. You're not big enough. You're not clear enough on what your point of difference is. You need to build your brand more. So the people I work with, I'm very honest with. You have to be, but constructive as well. And I kind of give people a lot of steps of what the next stages are, and never just approach a buyer again with the same information. They will have read it. It just wouldn't have been right for them. Make sure that's then your massive opportunity to set some new goals for yourself. Okay, they haven't heard back. Why don't I think they haven't heard back? Probably not big enough. Let's look at the brands they've got in their portfolio, making sure you've got that very clear point of difference. It's very succinct. They can understand it straight away. All of this work as well will help you get more cut through to the customer. So it's a challenging phase, but those guys don't have time to be able to feed back. So again, seek other opinions. Create that community, get a coach, get a mentor, whatever you need to do. Surround yourself with people to be able to build your brand and put that strategy into place so you're in a good position next time.
Really good advice. Thank you. Simi, what about you? Some no-nos or some great things that you've seen that you would advise people to do?
I'm going to echo a lot of what Wiz said. I think it's really research. We're a conscious beauty marketplace. So when brands that, don't even fit into our pillars approach us, it's a bit of a strange one. We're not asking you to be 100% fit all the pillars, but at least be conscious, right? Or have some sustainability aspect to your business. I think the other thing is, not seeing it as a partnership. I think, of course, it's a sales channel for brands, and what you're concerned with is most probably different. But I think seeing it as a partnership, especially when you're in a marketplace, is really important, because this is almost like an extension of you. When you're in a marketplace like YUTY, it's still your product listing, your product descriptions. It's not changed. So I feel like just understanding how you can collaborate and improve and drive that awareness so that channel does work, and supporting each other so that, so that it is profitable for both sides, I think is really important. And having a conversation about the fundamentals, you know, like profit margin. I think sometimes that's one thing, you know, where we're sitting down, and I think it's great because we're a startup and some indie brands that we work with are startup as well. But sometimes it's like having a little bit of understanding about the key fundamentals is really important, even if you have like outsource that part of the business. I think that's kind of important. I'm not saying you should have all the accountings and like the numbers down, but a little bit helps.
Absolutely. I mean, the whole reason we are all doing our businesses is to make money. So you need to understand the numbers 100%. And yeah, if you don't, you need to get to know them and come to the meetings and come to the retailers once you know your stuff.
Yeah.
Rebecca, what about for you? What's key for you that stands out when you're looking at brands?
I think everything's kind of been said. The only thing I would add is the importance of investing in content, good quality content. We see it a lot where we get a lot of reach, and it's just beautiful products created. When you see them in real life, it's this amazing story. It's fantastic. Inspirational person. But I think a lot of the service through cutting costs when it comes to, you know, content creation to shooting. And unfortunately, when you're connecting them like digitally with buyers and with people, it's all about that digital content has to represent your brand better, if not at least equal, of the real life products. And we see it time and time again where brands will come in and meet us and we just think, wow, this is amazing. But we get sent lookbooks that are completely off imagery, not at all a reflection of the brand they're trying to build. And I think it's sometimes that challenge of, especially when you're early and you're a one-man band, especially, you're trying to wear all these different hats. I think it's knowing where to outsource and knowing where to play to your strengths from the offset, and knowing, you know, going back to finances, where do you allocate budget that's most important? And for me, you know, especially across these past few years and this year of the pandemic, investing in good quality content that really represents your brand and looks like it could sit in Selfridges, not a low-res image taken in your bathroom sink, or, you know, of not a model, but maybe if it's how your brand comes across digitally. And I think taking that time to get a good team, to get really good imagery, makes the world of difference.
100%, and I completely agree with you. And especially as a multi-brand kind of marketplace, for us, we're using the brand's content, and probably the same for you, Simi, and for you, Rebecca, as well. But like, you're using the brand's content, and that's exactly what retailers are saying to us. If the imagery isn't good enough, if their content isn't good enough, then we can't post about it, we can't use it. So really getting that kind of tip-top shape is key.
I think just adding on that super quick, it's one thing for us to use the content, but also we need to feel comfortable marketing and promoting a brand that if a customer, because they will cross over. I think a lot of brands think that if we're selling through our channel, okay, back 100% they will. Customers feel really comfortable going direct to a brand, and they will. And that's with any big retailer. You know, the wholesale is about brand awareness. It's not necessarily a sales channel anymore. It's about getting out there to then benefit from a lot of the kickback for your D2C brand. If your brand isn't right and your presence doesn't look good, you know, how can a bigger retailer or anyone want to tag and want to promote you when they feel like they're, you know, there's a concern there of, am I sending my customers to a brand that is on the right level? I think making your part in this process is just key.
Absolutely. And we spoke about this kind of at the beginning of the talk, but obviously the rise of direct to consumer brands now is key. And I think people look at brands like Glossier and think, wow, they've done it, and they've sort of done it on their own. What do you think is the impact to be in multi-brand retail, to be stocked in places? What are, to you, the key benefits that you would just say to brands, no, you need to take note of this because it is important? WIZZ?
On their own, or did they have £1 million funding when they started? They have a huge amount of investors, and digital marketing costs a hell of a lot of money. And it's got more and more competitive, and algorithms and iOS updates, and I mean, all that stuff. If you want to build a pure D2C brand, it's super, super expensive. Retailers can catapult your brand awareness. Some of these big retailers have millions and millions of followers. Take a retailer like Next. A third of the population of the UK shops with Next. That's shitloads. Sorry, I keep swearing on this. I'm passionate. My personality, my visible founder coming through. But yeah, I think it's about having a hybrid model. I don't think it's about being with too many retailers, because again, it's a partnership. As Simi said, you have to drive the sales in that retailer as well. I think there's a big misconceptions that you will launch with that retailer and then things will just fly off the shelves. You need to have a channel strategy, and you need to have enough time, budget, and I suppose a strategy for each to be able to focus on them. So it's not spreading yourself too thinly either. So it is about having strategy, being strategic. D2C is definitely a great channel, and working with retailers has a halo effect on that and can reduce those digital marketing costs. Because if you just think about a customer journey, organically, someone will see a brand with a retailer, they'll probably follow you on social media. If you've got a really strong, compelling content strategy that can lead them to your website, lead them to your email list, again, what's that customer journey for them to get there? Then again, you've got that conversion opportunity. So again, it's thinking about all of those different channels and how they interlace and weave together. Which, yeah, I think a lot of people are kind of focusing one or two or a couple, but they're not looking at it holistically and looking at a complete strategy, which is hard when you are wearing lots of different hats, and it's about knowing what to outsource and when.
Absolutely. And Simi, for you, when you take on new brands, what's kind of the brand strategy route? Do they normally come to you with a bit of a plan? Do you work together with a marketing aspect, hat on? How does it work?
Oh, it's been a bit scrappy today. I think, now the idea is that we recognize that when we're curating these brands, that some shoppers may have a deep relationship, and others we have to, create that deep relationship with the brand, which we try and do with the Meet the Founder series and all the various different bits of content and partnerships that we do. And that's because because our brands that we have on YUTY, they are indie and they only have usually one other or two other channels. I see that we're like a complement, and we're complementing them in a sense that they're able to reach a larger audience, they're able to reach a global audience, they're able to get out of their specific geographic location, but keep that messaging and that branding consistent, because through the product listings, through the metadata, through images, because we're reusing, not replacing that content. And then I think why I also say it's a compliment is because, the shipping and the fulfillment, it's somewhat mirrored in them that they're drop shipping it, right? So they're able to still consistently deliver their brand, through shipping, even though we own that customer journey. What I will say about D2C is that it is incredibly capital intensive, that I think when you have a strategy, as WIZZ said, and you are partnering with, retailers or marketplaces, I would say marketplaces specifically, I think see it as that partnership and see it as another way to hit the consumer where they may be. Because there is 7 touch points before a consumer buys with you. And I think you just need to have something in place that recognizes that, have a partnership that makes sense, and then also consistently deliver your messaging.
Amazing, thanks. And Rebecca, for you, are you looking at those direct to consumer brands and that have made it and you have done really well and you want them to join LDC, or are you helping them kind of build up on their reputation and their awareness?
I think it's a little bit of, we work with a lot of brands that sorry. Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. Like a big thing, D2C is incredible. I think it is the future. It's 100% the future of where everything is heading. The reasons I like it is brands have that control. As a brand, you have the control over what you're putting out there, how you're communicating with your customers, how you convey that message. And that's always been one of the challenges with only going through wholesale or only going through B2B, is you don't have control of the end user. And you also don't have control of how your message is delivered and what your communication strategy is. And that can be quite challenging for a brand. So have a lot more control and power to convey your message better, which I think I think a big thing for us is working with brands that are a bit more established is important, because for us it supports us as well, credibility. It means that we're really focusing on brands that are doing good. So that sustainability, that consciousness, and it means that we can really firmly cement that conversation with customers and help those brands focus in on customers that really have that focus. So that's the relationship, I guess, on the slightly bigger brands. In terms of small, our role and why I'm here is market, give this route to market for smaller brands that haven't had that access. Wholesale is fantastic. We've spoken a lot about it, but it is expensive. It's a very outdated model. It's a traditional way of getting to market. We're living in a different time where the customer is king and the customer is on social media. And as a brand, you've got the ability to reach them directly and to build your own message. Look at the brands out there, especially through the pandemic, that have blown up. House of Sunny, which I'm sure a lot of you know, it's not beauty, but in fashion, and just the way that they have approached it is phenomenal. And the growth they have seen is absolutely magnificent. And I think the power in D2C is where the future of how we connect and build relationships with customers really is.
Really interesting. And so you mentioned House of Sunny. I'd love to ask Simi and WIZZ, is there a brand kind of out there that you think has been doing incredible things? It could be either a brand, a category, a movement, something that you've really seen that has caught your eye and that's got your attention. Simi?
I'm really biased to the YUTY brands because I feel like they've been doing wonderful things for a minute. We've got brands like Babe and Gilded that are just doing absolutely awesome things. Babe, it really does kind of allow you to kind of recognize your body. There's so much focus on skincare and makeup, but body care is something that I think Tiffany, the founder, has worked so hard on. And her story, I think you don't have to be on what she was on, which is welfare, to create such a fantastic brand. And her story alongside the brand, I think, is just what's kind of won me over. So if anyone is looking for a brand and they care about body care, definitely Babe is rocking it. And Gilded again with their marble body brushes. They received a lot of press because of their marble body brush, but it's again another fantastic brand, and they're both beauty brands as well.
Amazing. And WIZZ, for you, what are any standout brands or categories?
Yeah, I'm really liking category disruptors at the moment. I mean, I never thought I'd pay a premium or choose a deodorant that wasn't, I suppose, FMCG, which I think has been quite interesting. And I spoke to Daily Mail a couple of weeks ago about Posh detergent. Again, categories that you just would never think about that are suddenly a considered purchase. And I think this is there's a few reasons for this, but I think it's like deeming what is luxury. And I think as people buy less fashion or they're thinking more about purchasing things that they really love rather than so much fast fashion. And it's also about, I suppose, those. It sounds weird integrating wellness into deodorant, for example, but actually, if you bear with me, it's kind of almost one of those pauses through the day as well, where you do something that's that you kind of make into a ritual, or you make something into an experience that you actually enjoy. So I think I love, obviously, anything that kind of just disrupts the market and kind of comes along. So I think things like that have been really interesting. And I think anything that aligns to wellness as well has been really interesting. And I think the opportunity for collaborations and partnerships and for brands doing events really have been amazing. A brand I've worked with, YUTY Botanicals, has been brilliant. Did a lot of physical candle making workshops, very quickly pivoted to do those online, and has absolutely exploded during lockdown. And again, that was all about her connection and her community, and really building that through kind of word of mouth as well, and focusing on loyalty, which is a much better area to focus on than that new brand awareness customer acquisition, because it's a lot more profitable way to scale.
Amazing. And I'm going to just end on one final question. And if anyone does have any questions, do pop them in the chat for our speakers. But Rebecca, for you, where do you see the future of beauty retail?
Where do I see the future of beauty retail? I think it goes back to kind of, the question we kind of started with. And for me, that is a hybrid, focusing on omni-channel, it's focusing on physical and digital. I think the most important is to consider, I mean, you're looking at your end consumer and you're looking at how to make their life easy, how to give them the best experience, build that loyalty, and how to build that relationship that will continue. And I think understanding how each of the channels play into that strategy. Physical has that space for discovery, for experience, for touch, feel, meet, talk. You know, it might be personal appointments every quarter, but that is a huge, you know, brand, and it's a continuous relationship. It could be more frequent, it could be less. Digitally, it's how do you keep in touch? You know, what is the point of this sort of, you know, Instagram and social media for your brand and that customer's conversation? What does email do? It's being really strategic and personalized about how we value and how we communicate with those customers, how we make sure we're getting, you know, giving them enough to nurture that, we're receiving enough to know about them, to give the best experience. So I think it's really kind of on the customers we have and what is working, what do they want from us, and how do we continue and nurture and keep that relationship alive, you know, and maximize on it. And then using that same, I guess, recipe to be able to acquire new. I think it's a different approach to how it used to be, which was blanket, invite everyone, you know, big, boom, go out, spread yourself thin. I think we're looking now at a rethink of actually, I want to build really meaningful relationships with customers that will be with me forever. And I'm going to know my customers like I know my friends. And I think that's why a lot of talk here about the founders getting in front of their brand and coming out it's about that authenticity, about being genuine, about standing by our values, and knowing that customers aren't, you know, there's a lot of brands out there, there's just for the product. They're buying into what we're building and they're buying into the values and this, you know, what we're creating, which, yeah, so I think for me, that would be it. So a more personalized, I guess a leaner and more considered approach, really understanding the different channels and how they have a place in our businesses.
Absolutely. Simi, you're nodding away.
I agree with Rebecca. Ultra personalized, more convenient, sustainable is the way that I see the future of beauty retail. I think it's going, obviously I'm biased, but completely supported by the use of technology such as AI, AR, and VR. And I think translating into that offline, that omni-channel experience that really just allows the customer to feel like the brand gets who they are and, you know, be able to feel empowered by the brand because they understand that, you know, they're being met wherever they want to meet them, whether that's in store or online, and that they get them. They understand this product works for them. They know it's going to make them feel good, and they really understand who they are.
Amazing. And Wiz, any final comments to add to that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's about customer, it's about community, and it's about content, and really kind of how you merge all of those. But yeah, ultimately it's where does the customer want to find you? And physical retail is always going to be big for beauty. It was 80% pre-pandemic. McKinsey forecast that to be 65% as it's going to kind of level out. So it's still strong, it's still dominant, but actually that is a touch and feel and discovery point. But actually, how many people have discovered your brand before they've got into that retailer? It's making sure you're showing up online. What happens when people Google you? So it's really having, again, that customer-centric approach, thinking about that customer journey, really putting them at the heart of all of your decisions, which is something kind of I'm super passionate, having worked many years at Selfridges. It's kind of ingrained in me. So yeah, it's really thinking about your strategy from the customer point of view, and then how you can build that community, because ultimately that will create word of mouth, that will create that buzz, that will create that hype. And actually that's so valuable. That's free PR. It's fantastic. So it's a great way to grow an indie brand as well, because it's super powerful, and it's within your reach as well. It's something that you can be doing without a huge digital marketing budget.
Amazing. That's such good advice. Thanks, guys. Now I finished with, I am going to go to the chat because we have a few questions in there. Charlotte's asked, Wiz, you mentioned to not get too caught up on social and your followings on Instagram. What are your tips for knowing when to take a step back from social media and focus elsewhere while still maintaining an engagement with your following?
Everyone, I think it's, yeah, I mean, that's a big question, but what I teach a lot of indie brands. It's well, how long are you spending, how much time are you spending just on your social media? What can you start to outsource? And that's not necessarily about going to an agency. I don't believe in doing that when you're scaling. I think the content needs to be coming from you. Then it's about what elements of that you can start to be outsourcing, whether it's copywriting, whether it's somebody who's scheduling things, searching for images, hashtag research. There's lots of things that you can start outsourcing very, very quickly and quite reasonably as well, that will free up your headspace. Then the next thing is, what's your email marketing strategy? How are you getting people onto your database? How are you getting people onto your website? How are you improving your website conversion? So again, there's a lot of different things that you need to be focusing on. So I think I think stepping back from social media is, I think people go full in when they launch, and then it's about stepping stones of stepping away and one thing at a time, starting to outsource, and then kind of you start to pull back yourself. And certainly that's something that I've found I've done. And I used to spend all of my, probably not all of my time, but a good proportion of my time on it. And now I spend hardly anything on it because I've trained somebody up. I've got them so they know what I'm thinking. I set the strategy, I set the direction, and she knows how to execute that for me. And I've given her that responsibility to be able to then start to come to me with ideas. So yeah, I'd always say take a step back from social media, because you can always get completely overwhelmed with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Mimi's written in the chat here, lovely chat, ladies. I am a service business and would love to hear your thoughts on getting services out there. Rebecca, do you want to answer that one?
Okay, getting services out there. First of all, as well, I didn't realize that my connection's been dodgy, so I hope. Okay, sorry, it's been fine my end, but that's always how it happens, right? You never know how bad your connection is when you're on it. So I hope it's been all right. So services, I mean, it'd be great to get her a little more context. But I think where I would start, which I think applies to anything, is looking at who is your customer, really analyzing and looking at who is that customer, doing a persona, doing some research into the end user. And then I think it's looking back at what channels are they using, where are you going to find them, how does this person like to be communicated? I mean, it's common knowledge that an older demographic will be on different channels to a younger demographic, tapping into a much younger audience. Instagram, even TikTok, if it's old, traditional retail, maybe being in Chelsea on the King's Road is a good place. It really depends on who their customer is and what channels they like to use and how you want to reach them. So I think I would always start there and then map out that typical customer and look at and focus on where they're likely to be and how they like to be communicated with. A lot of testing, finding that customer, actually meeting them in real life. I know your services based. It is also a good reason why sometimes getting physical and actually meeting people is a great way to start off. Being able to speak to them and ask these questions, where are they, where do they discover services, where are they likely to be, and, have these conversations in real life that you can then translate into a digital marketing strategy, but always going directly to the source, directly to the customer. I think starting there is a really good place.
Really good advice. I also have been speaking to brands that are doing pop-ups and even just like market stalls in small areas, and just that interaction with the customers one-to-one, speaking to them directly and really hearing what they want. You can get it still on across digital, but it's hearing face-to-face really what they're looking for and taking that into account. It is so valuable. But thank you. This has been brilliant, and this session will be recorded. So for those that have missed it, can watch it back. Teresa, I know you were asking, so yes, it will be saved onto the platform. But just a huge thank you to you three for joining us, for being our first talk on Airfare, and being part of this. And we hope that people will come and discover some great indie brands, take on all your advice. If anyone does have any questions for the team, please ask us on Curate Beauty booth, or you can get on touch on Instagram or hello@curate-beauty.com. Amazing. Thanks, guys. Thank you for today, and we'll speak to you soon. It's been brilliant.
Thank you so much.